I pretended to be unconscious in the hospital just to hear what my family really planned to do with my money. The accident wasn't my fault. A drunk driver ran a red light and slammed into my Tesla at 60 maybe Easternport. When I woke up in the ICU, machines were beeping around me and my head felt like it had been split open with an axe. The first thing I heard was my stepmother Delilah's voice. The doctor said he might not wake up for weeks, maybe never. I kept my eyes closed and my breathing steady. Through the fog of pain medication, I realized this was my chance to finally learn what my family really thought of me. Even if he does wake up, my half-brother Quentin said, the brain damage could be severe. He might need care for the rest of his life. My biological father cleared his throat. We need to discuss the will. I'd always known my family was money hungry, but hearing them plot over my hospital bed while I was supposedly dying was a new low. 3 years ago, my grandmother had left me her entire fortune, $3.2 million in real estate and investments. She'd skipped over Dad completely, telling the lawyer he'd pissed away every opportunity she'd ever given him. The inheritance had caused a rift. Suddenly, everyone wanted to be my best friend. Delilah started cooking my favorite meals. Quentin invited me to golf every weekend. Dad began calling just to chat, something he'd never done in my 28 years of life. I should have seen through their sudden affection. The power of attorney documents are in his desk, Delilah said. I saw them when I was looking for his insurance papers. You went through his private files? Dad asked. Someone had to handle things while he's unconscious, she snapped. The bills don't stop coming just because he's in a coma. I wasn't in a coma. The doctors had told me I'd suffered a severe concussion and some internal bleeding, but my brain function was normal. I'd been conscious for 2 days, but the morphine made me groggy and I'd been drifting in and out of sleep. That's when I'd overheard them making plans. If he dies, everything goes to us as his only family, Quentin said. And if he lives but can't function? Dad asked. Then we become his legal guardians and manage his money, Delilah explained. Either way, we finally get what should have been ours from the beginning. My blood ran cold. They weren't hoping for my recovery. They were hoping for my death, or at least my permanent disability. What about the girlfriend? Quentin asked. Fiona's been here every day. She's not family, Delilah said dismissively. She has no legal claim to anything. Fiona. Sweet, caring Fiona who'd been by my bedside reading to me, holding my hand, crying when she thought no one was looking. She was the only person who genuinely cared whether I lived or died. We should probably look into moving him to a state facility, Dad said. Keep the costs down. The cheaper, the better, Delilah agreed. Every dollar we save on his care is a dollar we keep. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were already planning to warehouse me in some substandard facility while they spent my inheritance. What if he wakes up and remembers things? Quentin asked nervously. Brain injuries cause memory loss, Delilah said. We'll tell him he asked us to help manage his finances after the accident. Who's he going to believe? His loving family or his confused, injured brain? The nurse entered to check my vitals. Any change? She asked. Nothing, Dad said sadly. We're just praying for a miracle. After she left, they resumed their plotting. I've already looked into transferring the house deed, Quentin said. If we can prove he's mentally incompetent. That's when I realized they'd been planning this for longer than just the 3 days since my accident. They'd been researching how to steal my inheritance while I was fighting for my life, but I needed to understand how deep this conspiracy went. So I continued to lie there, listening to every poisonous word. The lawyer said we need medical documentation, Delilah continued. Dr. Martinez mentioned possible cognitive impairment from the head trauma. Dr. Martinez had said no such thing. He'd specifically told me my cognitive function was intact and that I should make a full recovery. But they were planning to manipulate his words or find a different doctor willing to lie. I already found someone better, Dad said. Dr. Rothschild owes me money from poker. Big money. He'll write whatever assessment we need. My father's gambling debts. I should have known. Growing up, I'd watched him lose our house twice to casino debt. Mom had to borrow from her sister just to keep food on the table. After she died when I was 16, Dad married Delilah within 6 months, primarily because she had money and was stupid enough to pay off his creditors. What about his business? Quentin asked. I owned a software consulting firm called Data Bridge Solutions. Nothing huge compared to the inheritance, but it generated steady revenue and employed 12 people who depended on me. We'll have to sell it fast, Delilah said. Too complicated to manage, and we don't know anything about computers. The buyers I contacted are offering $400,000, Quentin said. My heart nearly stopped. The business was worth at least $1.2 million based on revenue, client contracts, and intellectual property. They were planning to sell it for pennies on the dollar, probably to one of Quentin's buddies who'd flip it for the real value. What about the employees? I wanted to scream. These people had families, mortgages, kids in college. They trusted me. That's not our problem, Dad said coldly. Business is business. Footsteps approached in the hallway. I heard Fiona's voice talking to someone, probably asking for an update on my condition. She's back, Dad muttered. We should go. Can't have her overhearing our conversations. Remember, Delilah whispered. If anyone asks, we're just heartbroken family members praying for his recovery. Delilah dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, preparing her performance. They shuffled out as Fiona entered. Her presence immediately changed the energy in the room. Where my family brought darkness and greed, she brought warmth and genuine love. Hey, baby, she whispered, taking my hand in both of hers. I brought your favorite coffee. I know you can't drink it yet, but maybe the smell will help. The rich aroma of French roast filled my nostrils. She'd driven 40 minutes across town to the little cafe where we'd had our first date 18 months ago. That was Fiona. thoughtful about the smallest details. The doctors say you're healing remarkably well, she continued, her thumb tracing circles on my palm. Your brain activity is completely normal. Dr. Martinez thinks you might wake up any day now. She paused and I heard her voice catch. I've been staying at your place taking care of Buster. He misses you so much. Every morning he sits by the front door waiting for you to come home. I tried to explain that you're hurt, but he just looks at me with those big brown eyes like I'm lying. Buster was my 3-year-old golden retriever, rescued from a shelter after his previous owner died. In all their scheming about my assets, my family hadn't mentioned him once. They'd probably dump him at a kill shelter the moment they got control of my estate. I've been reading him your favorite books, Fiona continued. Remember how you said dogs understand more than people think? Yesterday I was reading him The Odyssey, and when I got to the part where Odysseus returns home, Buster's tail started wagging. I think he knows you're coming back. Tears leaked from my closed eyes. I tried to will them to stop, but the morphine made emotional control difficult. Your family's been here a lot, Fiona said carefully, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. They seem very concerned about your business affairs. Delilah asked me yesterday if I knew where you keep your important documents. Even Fiona could sense something was wrong. I told her I didn't know, which is true, but something about the way she asked made me uncomfortable. And Quentin's been asking strange questions about your grandmother's house, like whether you ever talked about selling it. Smart girl. She was picking up on their predatory behavior. I probably shouldn't say this while you're unconscious, she continued, but I never liked them much. After we started dating, you changed whenever they were around. You became tense, guarded, like you were waiting for them to attack. She squeezed my hand tighter. I should have said something before, but you seemed to want to believe they'd changed after the inheritance. You wanted so badly to have a real family. That hit me like a punch to the gut. She was right. Despite years of neglect and emotional abuse, I desperately wanted to believe that money hadn't been the only reason for their sudden interest in my life. I'd wanted to believe that maybe, finally, Dad loved me for who I was. What a fucking fool I'd been. The nurse says visiting hours are almost over, Fiona said, but I'll be back first thing tomorrow. I took time off work until you wake up. She kissed my forehead gently. I love you. Come back to me soon. After she left, I lay alone in the dark, processing everything I'd learned. My family wasn't just planning to steal my money. They were planning to destroy everything I'd built. My business, my employees' livelihoods, my relationship with Fiona, even my dog's life. And if I recovered too quickly or remembered too much, they were prepared to kill me. The next morning brought a new horror show. This time all 3 of them arrived early, before visiting hours officially began. Dad must have bribed someone to get access. The probate attorney says we need to move fast, Dad announced once they'd confirmed I was alone. If we file for emergency guardianship now, we can have control of his assets within 2 weeks instead of 30 days. What's the rush? Quentin asked. The girlfriend, Delilah said with disgust. She's been asking too many questions. Yesterday, she wanted to know if we needed help managing his business obligations. And like she thinks she has any right to be involved. We need to discredit her, Dad said. Make it clear she's just a gold-digging whore who saw an opportunity. Rage boiled inside me. Fiona worked as a pediatric nurse making barely $50,000 a year. She drove a 10-year-old Honda and lived in a tiny apartment because she spent half her income on medical school applications. She was the least materialistic person I'd ever met. I've been researching her background, Quentin said. Did you know she has student loan debt? Almost $80,000 from nursing school. Perfect, Delilah said. We'll claim she's desperate for money to pay off her loans, that she manipulated him into the relationship for financial gain. They were going to destroy her reputation to eliminate her as a threat. What about the competency hearing? Quentin asked. Dr. Rothschild will testify that cognitive impairment is likely permanent, Delilah explained. I've already drafted his statement. Brain trauma, memory loss, inability to make rational financial decisions, the whole package. She pulled out a folder and started reading. Patient exhibits severe disorientation, memory gaps spanning several years, and marked difficulty processing complex information. In my professional opinion, he lacks the mental capacity to manage his financial affairs and requires permanent legal guardianship for his own protection. Every word was a lie, but spoken by a doctor in a courtroom, it would be devastating. The best part, Dad said, is that even if he does wake up, we'll already have legal control. And Dr. Rothschild will testify that any improvements are temporary, that brain injury patients often have good days followed by rapid deterioration. How much is Rothschild costing us? Quentin asked. $50,000, Dad admitted, but it's worth it to secure millions. They were paying a doctor $50,000 to commit perjury and destroy my life. And if the competency claim doesn't work? Quentin pressed. Delilah's voice turned cold. Then we proceed with the backup plan, which is? Medical complications happen all the time with brain injury patients, she said. Blood clots, infections, medication errors. Very tragic, but not uncommon. My blood turned to ice. They weren't just planning to steal my money, they were planning to murder me if legal manipulation failed. Isn't that risky? Quentin asked nervously. Only if we're careless, Dad said. I've been researching his medications. The morphine drip could easily be adjusted. A slight overdose would cause respiratory depression, then cardiac arrest. Happens to head trauma patients all the time. The security cameras? Quentin worried. There's a blind spot near his IV setup, Delilah explained. I timed it yesterday. 30 seconds is all we'd need. They'd been planning this for days, studying my medical equipment, timing the nursing rotations, identifying security vulnerabilities. Besides, Dad continued, even if there are questions, who's going to suspect his grieving family? We're the ones who've been here every day, praying for his recovery. I wanted to vomit. These monsters were discussing my murder like it was a business transaction. When would we do it? Quentin asked. Tomorrow night, Delilah said. There's only one nurse on duty after 11 p.m., and she takes her break at midnight. Security makes rounds every 2 hours. We'd have a clear window. Less than 18 hours. They were planning to kill me in less than 18 hours. What about disposal of the evidence? Quentin asked. What evidence? Dad laughed. We bring nothing, leave nothing. Just a grieving father adjusting his son's blanket in the middle of the night. If anyone asks, we couldn't sleep and came to pray over him. The casual way they discussed ending my life was the most chilling thing I'd ever heard. And afterward, Quentin pressed. We let grief run its course, Delilah said. Plan a beautiful funeral. Invite all his business contacts and clients. Show them how devastated we are by our loss. The will reading can happen within a week, Dad added. Then we start liquidating assets immediately. The house first, then the business, then the investment portfolio. They turned my murder into a financial timeline. I'll handle selling his personal effects, Quentin said. Electronics, car, jewelry. Might as well get something for them. Don't forget the dog, Delilah added. Pure breed golden retriever should be worth a few $100s. They were planning to sell Buster like a piece of furniture. A nurse entered to check my vitals, interrupting their planning session. Good morning, she said cheerfully. Any changes overnight? Still the same, Dad said sadly. We're just hoping for a miracle. Brain injuries can be unpredictable, the nurse said kindly. Sometimes patients wake up suddenly when we least expect it. We're prepared for any outcome, Delilah said with false bravery. We just want what's best for him. After the nurse left, they resumed plotting. I've already contacted 3 different funeral homes, Dad said. Memorial Gardens has a good package deal for $12,000. Nothing too fancy. He would have wanted something simple. I'd never expressed any preference for funeral arrangements because I was fucking 28 years old and planning to live for decades. What about life insurance? Quentin asked. 2 policies, Delilah said, consulting her notes. His employer policy for $100,000, plus the personal policy for $500,000 that I helped him buy last year. I remembered that insurance meeting. Delilah had insisted I needed more coverage for Fiona's financial security if something happened to me. She'd even offered to pay the premiums as a birthday gift. Now I understood why. So we're looking at inheritance plus business sale plus insurance, Dad calculated. Almost $5.2 million total. Minus taxes and expenses, Delilah corrected. But still over $4 million clear. How do we split it? Quentin asked. This was the question I'd been dreading. How do 3 sociopaths divide the profits from murdering their own family member? Equal 3-way split seems fair, Dad said. We're all taking the same risk. I disagree, Delilah said sharply. I've done most of the planning and research. Plus, I'm the one taking the biggest legal risk with the guardianship filing. But I'm his biological father, Dad countered. I have the strongest legal claim. And I'm the one who found Dr. Rothschild, Quentin added. Plus, I've lined up the business buyers. Even in conspiracy, they couldn't cooperate. Greed was already turning them against each other. We'll figure out the details later, Dad said impatiently. Right now, we need to focus on tomorrow night. They spent another 30 minutes reviewing their murder plan, discussing every detail from the timing of the medication overdose to their alibis afterward. By the time they left, I felt physically sick from listening to them. But I also felt something else. Cold, calculating rage. They thought they were so clever, planning my death while I lay helpless. They had no idea I was recording every word in my memory, building a case that would destroy them all. That afternoon, Fiona returned with a book of poetry, something she'd been reading to me for days. As she settled into the chair beside my bed, I made a decision that could either save my life or end it. I was going to wake up. But first, I needed to set a trap. When Fiona finished reading and left for her dinner break, I used the call button to summon my nurse, Miranda, a sharp woman in her 50s who'd been taking care of me since the accident. Miranda, I whispered, barely opening my eyes. I need help. She nearly dropped her clipboard. Oh my God, you're awake. Let me call Dr. Martinez right away. No, I said urgently, grabbing her wrist with what little strength I had. Please, I need to tell you something first. Something important. She sat down immediately, professional instincts kicking in. What is it? My family, I said slowly, as if the words were difficult. I've been hearing them. They're planning to hurt me. Her expression shifted to concern. What do you mean? I told her everything. Their plans to steal my inheritance, the fake medical testimony, and most importantly, their plan to kill me tomorrow night. That's a very serious accusation, Miranda said carefully. Are you sure you weren't dreaming? Head injuries can cause vivid hallucinations. I know how it sounds, I said, but I need you to help me prove it. Tonight, when they come back, can you set up a recording device? Hide it somewhere they won't see it? Miranda looked torn between professional skepticism and genuine concern. If I'm wrong, I continued, then we delete the recording and pretend this conversation never happened. But if you're right, then we're talking about attempted murder, she finished. She stared at me for a long moment, then nodded. I'll figure something out, she said. But we're also calling security to watch your room tonight. No, I said quickly. That'll scare them off. I need them to try so we can catch them in the act. Absolutely not. I'm not using you as bait. It's the only way to stop them, I insisted. If we just accuse them without proof, they'll claim I'm having delusions from the head injury. They've already bought a doctor to testify that I'm mentally incompetent. Miranda's professional mask slipped, revealing genuine anger. They bought a doctor? $50,000, I said. Dr. Rothschild, he owes my father gambling money. That decided it for her. All right, she said grimly. But we're doing this my way. I'll set up the recording, but security will be stationed just outside your room. If anything goes wrong, they'll be inside in seconds. And Dr. Martinez? I asked. We'll brief him after we have evidence, she said. Right now, the fewer people who know you're awake, the better. That evening, Miranda smuggled in a tiny digital recorder, positioning it behind my IV stand where it couldn't be seen, but would pick up any conversation near my bed. She also arranged for additional security, though they were stationed in a way that wouldn't be immediately visible to visitors. Then we waited. At 11:47 p.m., I heard footsteps in the hallway. My heart started racing, but I forced myself to breathe steadily and keep my eyes closed. The door opened quietly. I recognized Dad's voice whispering to someone, probably hospital security. I know it's late, he said, but we couldn't sleep. We just wanted to sit with him for a few minutes. Of course, came the guard's sympathetic reply. Family time is important. Take all the time you need. Dad, Delilah, and Quentin entered my room, closing the door behind them. The nurse won't be back for 20 minutes, Delilah whispered. Security just passed. We have a clear window. Are you sure about this? Quentin asked nervously. It's the only way, Dad said coldly. He's getting better too fast. If he wakes up tomorrow, all our planning was for nothing. Delilah approached my IV setup. I heard the rustling of her purse, then the soft click of something being opened. This is concentrated morphine, she whispered. Enough to stop his breathing within minutes. What if they do an autopsy? Quentin worried. Morphine is already in his system, Dad explained. They'll assume it was a dosing error or equipment malfunction, tragic accident. Through barely opened eyes, I watched Delilah pull a syringe from her purse. She was actually going to do it. She was going to murder me while my father and half-brother watched. Hold his arm steady, she instructed Quentin. This was it, the moment of truth. As Delilah reached for my IV port, I grabbed her wrist with both hands. What are you doing, stepmother? All three of them screamed. Delilah dropped the syringe, and Quentin stumbled backward into the heart monitor. Alarms started blaring as the monitor crashed to the floor. Within seconds, Miranda burst through the door followed by 2 security guards and Dr. Martinez. She was trying to inject something into my IV, I said, sitting up fully and pointing at the syringe on the floor. Delilah's face had gone completely white. This is a misunderstanding, she stammered. I was just adjusting his blanket. With a syringe full of morphine? Dr. Martinez asked, having quickly examined the device. Dad tried to take control. My son is clearly delusional from his injuries. He doesn't know what he's saying. Actually, Miranda said, holding up the digital recorder, we have everything on tape, including your conversation from yesterday about buying false medical testimony. The security guards moved to block the exits as Dad's face transformed from fake concern to pure panic. This is entrapment, he said desperately. You can't record patients' families without consent. We can when they're planning murder, Dr. Martinez said grimly, nodding to the guards. As they placed my family in handcuffs, Quentin broke down completely. It was their idea, he sobbed, pointing at Dad and Delilah. I just wanted my share of the business sale. I never wanted anyone to die. Shut up, you idiot, Delilah hissed, but it was too late. Tell us about the business sale, one of the guards said, pulling out a notebook. Quentin spilled everything. The undervalued sale price, the buyer who was his friend, the plan to split the profits. Within hours, the police had arrested all 3 of them. The charges were extensive. Conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, fraud, embezzlement, and bribery of a medical professional. The investigation that followed revealed the true scope of their planning. Police found detailed notes in Delilah's purse outlining every aspect of their scheme. Dad's computer contained research on inheritance law, medical malpractice, and how to forge power of attorney documents. They'd also been planning to frame Fiona as a gold digger who'd manipulated me into changing my will in her favor. A will that didn't actually exist, but they'd intended to forge one after my death. Most damning was the paper trail showing Dad's gambling debts to Dr. Rothschild. The doctor was arrested the same night for agreeing to provide false testimony in exchange for debt forgiveness. The trial became a media sensation. Local news called it the inheritance murder plot, and the story was picked up by national outlets when details emerged about the elaborate planning involved. During testimony, prosecutors played the recordings of my family, discussing the best way to kill me. The jury looked physically sick, listening to them debate dosage amounts and disposal of evidence. Dad took the stand in his own defense, claiming he'd only been trying to protect me from making poor financial decisions while brain injured. The prosecutor destroyed him by playing the recording where he discussed adjusting my morphine drip to cause respiratory depression, then cardiac arrest. Delilah tried to claim she'd been coerced by Dad, but her own notes contradicted this defense. She'd been the ringleader, researching legal precedents and coordinating with Dr. Rothschild. Quentin's defense was that he'd thought they were only planning financial fraud, not murder. This fell apart when prosecutors played the recording of him asking about disposal of evidence and discussing funeral arrangements. All 3 were convicted on all counts. Dad received 25 years for conspiracy to commit murder and attempted murder. Delilah got 30 years as the ringleader. Quentin received 15 years for conspiracy and fraud. Dr. Rothschild was sentenced to 10 years for conspiracy and lost his medical license permanently. The The judge ordered all of them to pay restitution, though they had virtually nothing left after legal fees and the exposure of Dad's gambling debts. But the legal victory was only part of my revenge. During the investigation, I'd contacted my business partner and closest employees, explaining what had happened and assuring them their jobs were secure. Instead of selling DataBridge solutions, I expanded it, using part of my inheritance to open a second office and hire more staff. I also used the publicity from the trial to expose other cases of inheritance fraud, working with law enforcement to identify patterns of family members targeting vulnerable relatives for financial gain. 6 months after the trial, Fiona and I got married in a small ceremony at my grandmother's estate. My lawyer, Theodore Blackwood, walked me down the aisle. He'd become more of a father figure than Dad ever was. During our wedding planning, we'd discovered that Grandma had actually left detailed instructions in a sealed letter, to be opened only if her inheritance became the subject of legal dispute. In it, she explained that she'd known exactly what kind of person my father was and had specifically structured the inheritance to protect me from his influence. She'd also left additional funds in a trust that could only be accessed if I was married to someone who met certain character requirements, essentially ensuring that any future spouse would have to be investigated and approved by an independent committee. Fiona passed the evaluation easily. The trust provided an additional $500,000, which we used to establish a foundation helping families dealing with inheritance disputes and elder financial abuse. We converted Grandma's estate into the foundation headquarters, turning her former home into a safe space for people whose families had betrayed them for money. Buster, my golden retriever, became the unofficial therapy dog for foundation clients. He had an uncanny ability to sense when someone needed comfort, often resting his head on visitors' laps during their most difficult moments. 2 years after the trial, I received a letter from Dad in prison. He claimed he was sorry and that they'd only been trying to protect me from making poor financial decisions while injured. Even behind bars, he couldn't admit they'd tried to murder me for money. I threw the letter away without finishing it and had my attorney send a cease and desist order prohibiting any further contact. Some people never change. But some inheritances, the really important ones like integrity, compassion, and love, can't be stolen no matter how hard they try. Last month, Fiona and I celebrated the birth of our daughter, Elena. Unlike my father's family, this baby will inherit something worth more than money. Parents who actually love her and would die to protect her rather than kill her for financial gain. At Elena's christening, I held her in the same church where Grandma's funeral had been held. Looking around at the friends and chosen family who'd supported us through everything, I realized that the real inheritance Grandma had left me wasn't money at all. It was the lesson that family isn't defined by blood or legal documents. It's defined by who shows up when your life is falling apart, who holds your hand in hospital rooms, and who loves you enough to help you build something better from the ashes of betrayal. Dad, Delilah, and Quentin had tried to steal my inheritance, but they'd only succeeded in helping me discover what was truly valuable. And that inheritance, love, loyalty, and the strength to choose your own family, is something no one can ever take away.